Right, I'm just going to endeavour to actually tell you some of the things of my life story, but I'm not very good with my memory since I had COVID. I've got brain fog and a few other things, but by the grace of God, I'm still alive and kicking. Okay, so what I'm going to share with you, hopefully, it is coming from my heart, but I had to write the notes down and I will follow them, so excuse me whilst I do that, because I want to get every detail possible on record, and good reasons why as well. So I'm just clear a few things from here and I'll try and explain to you why I'm doing this. Well, there are a lot of people out there who do not understand me. Everybody would say that, I'm sure, about themselves. But anyway, and where I'm coming from, including members of my own family, sadly. It's just the way life is. And therefore, before I pop my clogs, as we used to say in the farming communities in the north of England, I would like to share some of the lows and the highs of my life, which hopefully will be a help to others to better understand me and what has shaped me over the years and why I am the way I am. It's been a long journey. I'm 76 years of age, by God's grace. And I'm hoping to leave this series of interviews that I'm doing, and starting with today, as a legacy, really, mainly for my children and for their children, because there's a lot of false accusations out there that have been made by some people, and it's rather sad because it's been hard to deal with, because a lot of them are false. And I say a lot because sometimes I get my name right. That's about as far as they get. But nevertheless, I think there are a lot of misguided folk out there, mischievous, some of them, and even some plain just jealous. I've had it most of my life because I've been successful in many areas from a very young age, and I just thank God for that. And I can see the Lord has actually helped me in many respects, but it's also brought upon myself a lot of criticism for different things, and as I say, quite hurtful and quite misguided, these people. And some of them are outright evil, that's what I can say, but never mind. I know that I've made many mistakes in my lifetime. Who hasn't? And some people along the way I've hurt, and I sincerely apologize for that. I really do. Because the older I get, the more I realize that really I needed to make changes in my life, and I've made more changes in the latter part of my life, but still people have misread me or misunderstood me. But anyway, as I say, this is mainly to put the record straight before I pop my clogs, and I just want to be more considerate of others. Some of the things that made people jealous I've got rid of. I just wear a simple Fitbit watch instead of a nice watch. I don't wear any jewellery, not that I can wear jewellery, and I don't wear a wedding ring, by the way, because I have allergies that the skin flares up and things like that, and I'm a little bit allergic to jewellery in that sense. My role model has been and is Jesus of Nazareth. When I look and read at the way in which he dealt with people and lived his life, and falsely accused as well of many things, and even been of the devil himself. They said in scripture, some people called him Beelzebub, a son of Beelzebub, and some terrible things. But Jesus did say, he said, if they've persecuted me, they'll persecute you also. So, and ever since I became a believer at the age of 21, it was a long road. I read the Bible from beginning to end. It took me 2.25 years because I'm dyslexic, and I also wanted to take every little bit in. Do you see what I mean? Every single bit of information. It's taken me, ever since reading that, what is it, 50 odd years ago or something, isn't it? So you do the sums anyway. I'm 76 now. And when I was 21, I really came to know a lot about the characters in the Bible, and it's an amazing book, really is. And I would like to say that Jesus is my mentor, and I want to be more like him. Come Judgment Day, all will be revealed, and including what others have said and do, because we're all accountable according to the Scripture for everything we do, say, and I dare say think, as what Jesus also put into Scripture as well, which is recorded there. So let's see, let's start from the beginning, shall we? I was born in 1946 in a hospital in Kendal in the Lake District, a most beautiful part of England, yeah. My mum's name is Lillian and my dad's name is Harry. Both are now deceased. I'm one of 4 siblings. I'm the youngest, the eldest being my sister Sheila, who is still alive. I spoke to her today, bless her. She's 12 years older than me. Next is my sister Denise, sadly now deceased. And my brother Michael. Michael is 8 years older than me. And during World War II, my mum and siblings were evacuated to a farm in a sleepy village called Walkup in Cumbria, formerly known as Westmoreland. We were blessed to have lived with distant relatives, and they were on a farm called Highgate Farm, right next door to the Army training camp, which is still functioning today. I used to call this dear couple Auntie Nanny and Uncle Jim. They had no children and were tenants of the farm and worked 7 days a week and without holidays. This dear couple almost adopted me. They loved me and cared for me very much. And just about every school holiday, I would travel all the way back to Walkup to spend time with either my Auntie Nanny and Uncle Jim or her sister, who lived in Kirby Stephen, which was not too far away from Walkup. I recall my mum was very ill with pleurisy one time, and this was during the time my dad was still alive, and I was sent to stay with my Auntie Top, as we used to call her, and Uncle Stanley, where I went to school for 3 months during this period my mum was ill. Those were some of the best times of my life, as a child that is. I was fishing in the River Eden and walking across the fells, and no wonder the place was called the Eden Valley, yeah. And when looking through my cherished photos of these very early days of my life on the farm, I couldn't find a photo that included my dad. And my elder sister, whom I spoke to today, was reminding me Dad only visited the farm during his time of leave. And this photo appears to have been taken where my dad was wearing a military uniform and was probably taken sometime before I was born during World War II era. Shortly after these photos were taken, the whole family moved to Scotland. I believe we lived in Scotland until I was about 5 years old. It was during our time living in Scotland that my father became paralysed. It was so bad that he could no longer walk, as the paralysis was all down his left side. And according to my mum, this was due to a hard knock on his head that he received. And when he was first diagnosed, it was discovered that he had suffered from a bleed on the brain. Really, really tragic, really sad, as you'll find out as I go into more of this story. But this cerebral thrombosis meant that he could hardly walk or function without being cared for full time by my mum, who already had now 4 children. The doctors recommended that he sought specialist treatment, and the nearest or most convenient hospital was in Darlington, County Durham, which led to the whole family moving to Darlington. He attended the Memorial Hospital for some time, but unfortunately the specialist could not help him, and he remained paralysed for the rest of his life. He was 40 years old when he first became paralysed, and I was probably about the age of 3, I think it was, my sister reminded me. And I often reflect on just how much this affected the family, particularly my dad as well, as he was only, as I say, 40 years of age. And he must have struggled with not being able to function as he did before this accident. And it's so very, very sad, as we'll find out as I go through the story. Very rare for my dad to actually speak to me. I was like, as I moved to Darlington at the age of 5, and I went to school, Reed Street School, I think it was, in Darlington. And so attending there, I'll tell you with a funny little story actually. Because we'd moved from Scotland, my mum had me in a kilt. And I used to wear the kilt with the green knickers, don't tell anybody. Shh. But when I moved to Darlington, which is quite a way south from Scotland, she made me wear a kilt to my first day at school in the north of England. Can you imagine it? I was so mocked and made fun of. And of course I was the only one in a kilt. And on the way home that first day, I walked through people's back gardens and backyards and all the back alleys and things because I was so embarrassed to be wearing a kilt, and people were trying to pull my kilt off me and things. Reminds me of a football story recently as well. Somebody tried to pull my pants down. Things haven't changed. Anyway, so I was that embarrassed, so I didn't want to wear a kilt again. It was a shame. And my mum meant well, but not the sort of thing to do to a child, I don't think. What happened is, as I was growing up, and I remember my dad didn't really talk to me very much. I think he was so depressed, so much into his shell because of, 40 years of age, suddenly life changed. He wasn't able to provide for his family, he wasn't able to enjoy his children or marriage or anything, or life generally. He was pretty much bedridden for most of the time. He could hobble around a bit, very slowly, but being paralyzed all down the left side, I could just always remember him struggling to walk. So he spent a lot of time downstairs. He had a big house, but his bedroom was downstairs in what was previously the dining room. And as I say, one day, for some reason, I was saying to him, because I wasn't very keen on school, I used to get bullied and things like that, and I tried to stick up for people who were also being bullied, and I used to get into trouble with the teachers as if I'd started it, and all I was trying to do was save people going through the same thing that I was going through, where these bullies were just making our life hell. I was having this conversation with Dad because I hadn't been attending school very well, as you'll see from my school records. I was actually absent sometimes as much as 72 times in a school year. So being absent for half of the time, and some of them were as little as 60 days a year, but I just couldn't stand school. I hated it. I was dyslexic, so I couldn't read things from the board correctly. I was always getting my knuckles rapped. I got the cane 6 times. They cane you 6 times, but with a big cane, it come down on you like a ton of bricks, and your hand was swollen in the end. So, I just thought, I'm better off going fishing or just walking down by the river or something, but I didn't go to school. And the reason was I got away with it is because my mum thought I'd gone to school, and I just never turned up. And I got away with it till my last year in school, and when the school brought her in and said, look, what is it? Why is your son not attending school? By then I only had 1 more year to go, and they explained that my dad had died. But anyway, let me go back to the story. So my dad had this conversation with me because I was worried about my schooling, okay? And I said, Dad, I really screwed up my schooling, my education and everything. I don't know what my future's going to be like and things like that. And my dad, for the first time, said something really quite encouraging to me. He said, look at your Uncle Jack, his brother. Dad said, look, I had a really good education and a good career, but your Uncle Jack was like you. He hardly had any education, but he owns so much property in Hong Kong where he was living, and he said he's done really well for himself. So, put your mind to something and put all your effort into doing what you want to do. And that stayed with me even to this very day. I was only just under 14 years of age, I think, at that time. And it wasn't long after that my dad passed away. And I'd like to explain to you, again, this is mainly for my family, to understand what happened. My dad, one day, was, I've never seen him so happy. Because every day he was pretty miserable. Some you might think I am too. Well, it runs in the family, and there's reasons why. Always think about it. Why is somebody the way they are? It is something to do with their past, okay? And it helps you to understand that a bit more, why people are the way they are, myself included. So anyway, my dad is really happy, and he's sitting on the side of his bed. My mum and I, every morning, would make his bed. We would do that between us, because by this time, all my siblings had been married. They're all away, living their own lives. So it's just me, Mum, and my dad. I could see he'd been in hospital. I know that. As a child, I remember him coming out of hospital, and this is probably the day after coming out of hospital. And I remember seeing slits on both of his wrists. And I didn't think anything at the time, but when I think back, I was concerned about him attempting to suicide, because he was, by all accounts, very, very depressed. Okay, but this day he was so happy, and he's sitting on the edge of the bed, letting us make the bed, and he was just so nice to me, and I wasn't used to that. And I've just got to remember him, and I want you to take into account, my dad had been struck down most of his life, for his adult life, and here he was, I think he was about the age of 52, 12 years after the accident, still in that same terrible condition, not being able to get around, live a life, a normal life, etc., etc. It was living hell for him. So he's so happy, and he's so nice to me, and I'm looking at Mum going, well, what did I do? Or what's gone on here? And the next day, he was dead. Now, I never got a full explanation from my mum, and I remember in those days you used to have the body in your front room, once the undertakers had taken steps to make the deceased look normal. And I said to my mum, I said, I want to go in and see my dad. And he's in the casket, and I said, well, she said to me, no, I don't want you to, son, remember your dad as he was. And anyway, when my mum wasn't around, I did go in to see him. And I remember, thinking, why did you die, Dad? What happened? And I do think he committed suicide. So that had a profound effect on me, that's for sure, because I remember my mental state from the age of around about then, 14, was really bad. And I would now say that's when I started deep bouts of depression. And they've been with me pretty much all my life. And, that's where I'm at this stage, So just so you understand, there were things really as well that I now start to think about, which wasn't really helpful to me maturing as a person. And that was because of the circumstances, Mum and Dad, and my mum actually ended up going to work as well. And I can remember when my dad died, that social services had said to her, why did you not make a claim? Why did you not apply for income from social services? Well, in those days, it was frowned upon and it was not thought to be right to be taking what basically is the dole or whatever you want to call it. And so my mum went out to work. She worked for a Jewish company in Darlington, in a ladies' outfit store, and they were very, very good to my mum. And she worked pretty much every day there. So at school days, I came home and it was just let yourself in. But I respect my mum for doing that, you know. But what it meant between mum and my dad being incapacitated, no one ever came to Parents' Day or Sports Day. You know, I was in the school football team, and nobody ever came to see me play. And also I was in the school brass band, and when the concerts were on, neither did my parents come to see me play. And then also Parents' Days, my parents just were never there. Not because they didn't care, it's just they were trying to deal with life. You know, mum bringing up 4 children, and I think pretty successfully. My dad just not being able to get around to do the things that a father would be doing normally. So yeah, I just think that might help you to see what my formative years were. And I found myself, I'll be honest with you, that when I achieved things, I tend to brag about them. And I think that got and gets up a lot of people's noses. So I've started to stop doing that. But I think I didn't have anybody as a child to, yeah, well done for playing football, this, you know, and I represented the school football team and the music and all of that. So, but, you know, one of the great things I remember, which was a big help and encouragement to me, was when my school, end of school report came out, because the person who wrote it was actually my school teacher, and the actual head of the school was the one who signed it. You'll see the difference in the signature and the writing. But that last year, I think Pop Barnaby was his name, big guy, tall. And when he came down with that cane, not only did you have the weight of his body and everything coming down, because he used to lift his leg right up in the air and come smack down on you. Anyway, he wrote such a nice thing about me, because after my mum had been to the school and I explained why, you know, that my dad had died and I'd been absent and things like that, ridiculous times, he would turn to be a little bit more understanding about me, and thank you, ding dong, a bit more understanding about me, and was really, really nice and helpful. But by then it was too late, because he said to me, he said, you know, you want to stay for school exams? I said, no, when I'm 15 on March the 29th, I said, I'm out of here. I'm out. I cannot stand school. Thank you very much, though. So what I did is I left, but I came in for the 3 days, I think. I did the exams. And anyway, he wrote a really nice report about me. And what it was it recognized some of through the, if you like, the personality of I was, and he'd see me. I was always trying to be helpful, always wanted to help people, and he noted that. And he also said that I was determined to succeed in life, and that was it. I needed to succeed. I needed to. It was, I'm, if you like, overdriven than a normal person, because I knew what I wanted to do from the age of 12, and I sought out to do that. I wanted to be a professional footballer or a professional musician, and I was picked up as a musician by a famous band, which we'll get into later on, and that changed my life. But I had to leave home at 16. It was very hard. I'll get into more of that later, but I'm just saying that school report, he really encouraged me, and I still have it today, and I thank God that I was eager to please, that I wanted to do what was right. I also, that I could take responsibility, I can work hard. He knew all of that was there. It was almost prophetic what they wrote, and that has been with me and an encouragement in itself. But what I did miss was having a proper childhood. That's what I really needed. And that's what I think you're blessed if you've had that. And that's why when we foster children, I really could relate to a lot of the children who'd been neglected by their parents, or abused by their parents or whatever, and I could relate to that. And I still have a heart for people today who don't fit into what is called the norm. I'm very much a loner, don't have a lot of friends, but the ones I do have are really great, but I think they understand me, whereas most people don't. So I just, this is the first in my series of my life stories, and that's where I'm going to leave it for now. And thank you for watching.